I hope everyone's okay. Hope everyone is good. Mic is on and I've gone live. Okay. So I'm a bit pushed for time, I'll be perfectly honest. And I actually wasn't going to go live just because I'm that short on time. However, given the move that we've seen from BitTensor and others today, it kind of felt like we should at least address what's going on there. Because for those of you that haven't been looking at the charts, BitTensor itself is up, 14% today at $394. So a very strong move from BitTensor. We will talk about BitTensor. We'll talk about Bitcoin. We'll talk about Solana. We may talk about other stuff, but I'm going to just cover those three initially as we get through. And before we do, I don't know if Alan watches these, but after Alan, if any of you watched the Trading Pub yesterday, and Alan's impassioned speech about BitTensor, yesterday I couldn't help but actually just go out and buy some more, and thank God that we did with that move. So thank you, Alan, for your insights on that. It even managed to seep through to my darkest heart. So yes, brilliant. Anyway, let's have a look at the charts where we kind of see things themselves. We'll start with Bitcoin, the top, as we always do. Languishing, I was going to use, sitting in and around sort of $121,000 since the Avenger call on Tuesday. We have seen it drop. We came back, it retested 120,000. I'm going to try and show you why I don't think that's necessarily a problem yet. We did make a move to an all-time high. Profit taking is going to happen. Pullbacks are going to be expected, but a strong bounce off an area of known support. And we just started to move ourselves back up. Absolutely fine with how that has gone. No concerns on the 3-day time frame. Bitcoin dominance, interestingly, this one's just still sticking around. It's climbing up, and I get it. People are going to always be talking about some form of compression, whether you want that one or you want this one. It doesn't necessarily matter, but compressions nonetheless, and I see them. If this is a compression, we are at the apex of it. Okay, so in the next couple of candles, we're going to either see Bitcoin's going to roll over. Sorry, Bitcoin dominance is going to roll over. Altcoins are going to move, or Bitcoin's going to break out to the upside. So if people are buying into the compression, then this is where we're at. I still think that we're going to see Bitcoin rise first. I think Bitcoin's about to start its next leg up. I don't think that rise will necessarily last too long. I think altcoins will catch up, but I do see Bitcoin dominance moving up with Bitcoin's price. Watch me now be proved wrong. But that's where I see we're there. Total 2, not really doing much. Rejection, it's basically done nothing since we spoke on Tuesday. It was around about 1.67 trillion on Tuesday. So we've just had this sort of, again, pip of a new all-time high for Total 2, a comeback down to previous areas of support, and it's just languishing around there. It's because, and I'll be honest, Ethereum hasn't really moved. You can see on the right-hand side, Ethereum's still sitting at 4,350. It's actually ever so slightly down today because it had such a big share of the altcoin market. That needs to move for this to really have any impact. So it doesn't matter that the likes of Tau, which was sat at 30th, or Zcash, which we'll have a look at in a moment, are flying, near flying. They don't have enough of the market share to really affect this chart, nor to affect Bitcoin dominance. We need to see the likes of Ethereum pick up. So we wait, and then we get to the one we've all been waiting for, and yet we will dive into this a lot better. But it does look like, and again, we keep moving this wherever it needs to be, but that was a fairly strong level of support. We have now moved. We are on the 5th green candle. It's only just recently opened, this 5th one, but we have been climbing for 5 days in a row off the lows of about $290. We're up $100 in the last 2 weeks. A very strong move there. We've broken through previous horizontal support and resistance levels. We have formed a higher high. Unless we see a massive collapse today on the daily time frame, that's going to look very good for us. And we've also started to break through that white sort of long-term trend line, which has been moving there. So again, another good move. We now have the next test, and we will talk about this in more detail, but as great as this move has been, I want to see it break this yellow line. This yellow line is going to mean it's going to be important for 2 reasons. One is obviously this channel that we've been working in, kind of I suppose a bull flag of some sort. If you had this move here, we just shortened these to sort of there, and you could duplicate this. We could be talking about something like that. They're taking us to an all-time high. That's the dream right now of where we want to go. But if we forget the bull flag, We also, breaking that 420 is going to be the next sort of higher high that it needs to break. Obviously, we've had a strong move, so we may get a pullback. Absolutely fine, as long as we can just stick the landing and build ourselves from that. But a strong move off that bottom there, yellow line, previously I'd seen as rejected from it. But if this momentum keeps on building, then who knows where we could get to. And when you go and have a look at the overall cryptocurrency market, actually over the last 24 hours, BitTensor is number 2, only slightly behind Zcash, but up 20% today, 22% over the week. So the vast majority of the move has been had today. Remember, that's the last 24 hours, so it's taken in the last 8 hours of yesterday, and then 10 hours of yesterday, 14 hours of today, which is why it's 20% and not the 14 that you see on this chart. But I just couldn't believe Zcash. I know we're here to talk about some other things, but have a look at Zcash. A month ago, it was down at $50. We're now pushing nearly $250 here. And whilst I don't necessarily care about Zcash, I think the point that I'm trying to make here is we're not in an actual full-blown alt season at the moment, but what you will see is some altcoins popping off. And I would argue it's not worth chasing those. Now, if beginning of October I'd noticed this, I probably would have still told you it's not worth chasing Zcash, and then we would have been laughed at because it's still over doubled itself since the beginning of October. But the point I'm trying to make is that, whilst we're not seeing the whole of the altcoin market moving double digits percentage-wise each day, we are seeing some of them selecting, and it just so happens that for BitTensor that seems to be today, which is brilliant. And we have stuck with that token for as long as we have stuck with it. We're starting to see that pay off, and until we actually see Bitcoin dominance fully break down, we're just going to see pockets of altcoins see those big moves there. Now, if you are very active and you want to play for it, then absolutely go for it. If, however, you're a bit more, I just want to sit on my hands, I've got my bag, I want to see where it goes, just be patient. Just be patient, as we've had to be with BitTensor, starting to see that move. And I thought, well, I'll have a look at the AI. And actually, AI has moved relatively well today. If I actually, last 24 hours, I mean, this is all like top 10,000. So, but we can see BitTensor there. We can see NEAR's move, BAT token. Just trying to put a Cadena. Filecoin down the bottom you can't see because my face is in the way, but yeah, so LivePeer, there's quite a few within the AI bracket that have also started to move. So maybe it's just that sector that is starting to see some of that limelight. Now, what we would love to see is Bitcoin dominance break from that compression, and then just the alt season, be washed with increases off the bat that we've already got some rocket fuel from a very recent move. That would be very good to see, but that's something we wish for. It's not, not something we rely on. But yeah, I don't think we're in a particularly bad position. We'll get into the charts in a second. Go into Bitcoin though, and just on the 12-hour time frame with a couple of the fibs and the liquidations, not really had any major move from where we were on Tuesday. We did dip down into this 120,000 sort of region. We started to take out a little bit of liquidity there, but to be honest with you, the buyers stepped in immediately and we've whipped ourselves back up. And at the moment, we're just battling this 122,000 level. It does so happen to coincide with that 2.272 fib level that I've kind of talked about at the moment. But in terms of liquidation areas, we're just sort of sat in the middle. And I think we're in a bit of a fight between the buyers and sellers as to where we want to go. But it is reassuring to see that at least that first move down to 120,000 was so aggressively bought back up, and we didn't actually see it drop below. It was 119,800, let's call it, is the lowest that it got to. So we could actually, in theory, move this down ever so slightly, because that would still be where the level's at, and this one here is still where it is. But okay, I won't go weekly time frame. Picture has not changed. We're still very nicely clear, but we skipped onto Bitcoin on the daily time frame. And I just sort of, this white line here, it's just historical. That's where the 50 EMA level is at the moment. So we just have that. We know we're significantly above that, as we just discussed. But just before we get into vector candles and everything else, we have a look at this wick down. I mean, we have a look, that 120,000 level, plenty of support and resistance in and around here. And you could make the argument, I appreciate that we did at the beginning of August dip over into above 120,000, was immediately sold off. But this was pretty much the ceiling of this range that we have been in since July. So a strong level that has been built over months, a final, decent long-lived break through it for a new all-time high. We've come back down and we've hit and we've retested that. The fact that we can bounce off that as support just shows that actually I don't think this market is necessarily over yet, and we're looking good. Even today, we've had that move down. We've come across the 10 EMA daily time frame, remember, and we've just turned around perfectly on that one, starting to build up. Sadly, 11 hours to go before today closes, so anything can change from them. We are some way away from the 50 EMA, but it's not been that long since we hit it. So, it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to immediately come back. And the 10 has proven to be a pretty decent level when we are moving upwards. The 20 is only down 119,000, so it's not the worst, although we are going to have to confirm that we've lost that support level. Let's go down onto some other information. I went through it on Tuesday, so there is obviously this vector zone down here. My rationale is as long as we stay above that sort of 120, start building that sort of new ranging area there, then this can obviously always be recovered, but it's not my immediate threat. And actually, there's an argument here to be said that as well, this one is of interest, but for me, it's sticking above this before I really think that we're going to be coming into there. I know obviously that makes sense, but I don't necessarily see that as an immediate target, so long as we can start building above that 120 level. So I know Carrie asked some questions about Bitcoin, a bit confusing in terms of where the market is. And I kind of get, where the patterns are if you're doing sort of rises and M formations and everything else. And so we'll start on the daily, because you're right, it can be quite difficult to find where some of these are. Where do we find the base to start our counts up and our counts back down? And the natural place to start is what happened in the tariffs down here. Obviously, we had that double bottom formation. We broke through daily time frame 1, 2, and then are we into 3? Is this the final bit? Now, I know there's a few arguments. We said, there's little bits here, but there's little bits in and around here where you could say, well, wait a second, isn't that one, this one, and that one? And I don't buy it just for 2 reasons. One, the time frame, daily time frame, needs to take a lot longer to play out, in terms of candles. And 2, just sort of how this has moved out. I appreciate it came down to the 50 EMA, but it sort of, within a couple of days, it brought itself back up and continued making another high there. So for me, I'd count this all-time high, which makes more sense at the top, with a genuine correction back down, which sort of that's the correction. And then we've had that move back up, broke through the 50 EMA on the daily time frame. There's a vector candle as well. Now we're getting through. And just because we've started to pull back here doesn't mean that that's necessarily over either. It's not a straight line all the time, but we're looking for a sort of a gradual path back when we see that correction to the 50 EMA. So I think we're probably in rise 3, which, given, it's taken us 6 months to do the first 2 rises, I'm just, bunching everything together here, but that, maybe an argument towards 2 to 3 months for that next kind of rise in that final phase. That kind of looks like it's tying in with the theory that we're going to see a top before the end of that year, or this year even. So yeah, I think that's where I am on the daily. Obviously, when we go down the lower time frames, we can look at things a little bit differently. The other thing to say, and I appreciate it's a double bottom in a rising market, but we do seem to have built some momentum off that sort of double bottom that we found at around about 110,000. Much needed, you could argue, to then create that next all-time high lunge, which we did last week. Let's take it down to the 4 hour. Let's get rid of those. Okay. Let's get rid of this line for now. So again, trying to find where the W is to start this bottom. I think we probably go with this. Definitely a bottom there. And when you get down to the hour and the 15, which I know, Carrie, you talked about, That's going to make it. But let's just assume that this is the W. Longer time frame for it to play out, potentially. But ultimately, I tried to look at this any other way, but on the 4-hour, I just think that's rise one. I do. I think that's just a one complete rise. And we're now starting to see it consolidate down. I don't know how low that's going to go. It can go much lower on rise counts for it to, during the consolidation period. But that seems to be a rise one for me. Someone else may view differently, and that's absolutely fine. If someone wants to take this as the W, that was rise one, pull back almost to the bottom. Now we're seeing rise two. Okay, fair enough. We may just have to wait another rise. But ultimately, I'm not seeing from a rise count a rise three with an M formation starting to form, which would then mean we've still got that next leg up. However high it may go and forever how long, there's still that next leg up. And we've seen since making that all-time high, a lot of, well, not a lot, but definitely some negativity with this pullback, which is obviously what you want to see, so that any fear can be brought up before that next move. But, even on the 4-hour, you can see, get rid of this yellow line, this pullback, all it's really done, yes, it wicked below it, but we've basically just touching that 50 EMA. We've found some nice little support along that 50 EMA, and now we're just waiting for it to move across. We vectored into the 50 EMA on the 4-hour, then we would burst through it, but as I said, bought up aggressively with a nice little sort of low test there. We haven't really seen that follow through, which I would like to see. Market opens in 15 minutes. It would be great for us to see that. And sort of find a vector candle on the 4-hour time frame to kind of take us through. We obviously have that still to eat up. It seems like almost an inevitable target. And I don't think it'll be too long before we see 24,000. But we have to then say, well, why didn't we eat the rest of that 19,000 when we whipped back down? Actually, now I look at it, because we'd already closed up there. So maybe I don't want to. I want to try and be positive today, but obviously, looking at 119,000 on the 4-hour time frame, it may be something that we need to consider for when we're moving through. I will just go down to the hourly, Carrie, just for yourself to see if there is any better explanation there. But for me, it might be hard to find where the counts are, just because it is a bit choppy. Nothing's always going to look super clean. But just try and have a look at what you feel is comfortable for sort of, because this is, now we're on the hourly, this is, nice flat bottom there. And you might feel you're clutching, but there was sort of a move up to the 50 EMA, and then we've come back down. I think from an hourly point of view, there is an argument to be had there that was probably a W, and then maybe a short rise there, pull back, but this has to be a long rise. This one I feel it's still a rise two on the 1-hour, and then we're just consolidating into it. And the idea will then be we'll get a rise three from that one. So even on the hourly, I think my opinion is we're seeing rise two. Let me try and counter that with where could it be. If that was a 1, I just don't know where 2's going to be. There, maybe? No. I was just trying to see if this was the double top that maybe was throwing you off, and we're just sort of seeing that drop one coming down. But again, on the hourly, we've come down. Hourly time frame, lose the 50. Don't worry about it. The 200 has caught us. I mean, we slipped through it for an hour or two, but we're starting to build back up, and we're just having that battle now with the 50 EMA, just in time for the US markets to open. Let's see if that can sort of, help create that momentum, get through that 50 EMA with a vector candle, and start to eat some of these vector blocks. That's what we'd want to ultimately see. Let's get on to Tau. Okay. I mean, just look, nice, strong green candles there. Worrying, I suppose, because we know vector candles, when we're in a range, like to be collected again. But what was left of this little vector candle's gone. But I think we talked about them so often, we should mark them. 360, that was the high we needed to see. Now, technically, in the next 10 hours, we could see an absolute sell-off and close below it, and we would have to argue that we didn't have a higher high formed, at least on that candle. So that's something to watch out for. But we've gone through that one at the moment, and then we are at this battleground here, just sticking our nose above it as things stand. So today's green candle, depending on how that closes, could at least take up two of our biggest concerns and totally change that sort of narrative of how it's looking. We are no longer forming lower lows. You know, we are building on higher highs at the moment. And what, it's a higher high, isn't it? But that higher high has taken out two of these previous humps, shoulders, whatever you'd like to call them, three if you want to take that one there as well. But yeah, you know, a strong move today. I've not been on Twitter or X or the news to see if there's anything that has driven that. More than likely, we've just been suppressed for so long that we're finally starting to see a spring. We have seen these before. We've got to curb our enthusiasm a little bit. Over the time, we have seen strong green vector candles moving us off this bottom, only for it to fall about later. So every journey starts with that first step. I've said that before. It's great that we're now 10 or so steps into it and we're still climbing, but there's a little bit more work, unfortunately, for us to do because we're not challenging previous all-time highs yet. So still got its work to do, but I'm happy with the progress it's making. I mean, up $50 today, just about. A very strong move for us to take on there. The 4 hour time frame. Now, the 4 hour time frame, still a very nice time frame in terms of, you know, the position that we're looking at. Bottoming pattern here, so that move up. Trying to see from a rise count. Certainly, anyway, a move up. Bit of exhaustion at that move. Just pulls back, close those vector candles that had formed here, back down to the 50 EMA, and then again, strong green vector candles through it, and then we've seen, you know, 3 vector candles, still 2.5 hours to go on this one, just climbing our ways out, breaking through. You know, in the last 24 hours on the 4 hour time frame, we've broken through the 50 and the 200, which were overlapping each other, the 10 and the 20, and the 800. We're now sitting above all of those. They're not in the greatest of orders right now, and they're going to have to sort of work themselves out. But you can actually kind of see just how quickly these EMAs are turning up, and I think that sort of potentially presents, you know, some concern of just tiredness, of exhaustion, buyer's exhaustion or whatever, and maybe we see some sort of correction. But if we use these previous humps, shoulders, or highs in the way down as support, you know, moving back down, I'd take a move even back down to the 360 as long as we could build off it and then look to move again. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Would be even better though if over the next few hours we can get above 400 and then try and use that 390 as a level that we fall back to. The speed at which we do that may just show how hard we're going to fall, but you know, we've got to be happy. We've got to be happy looking at your portfolios. No idea what that's doing to anybody's alpha tokens. You'll have to let me know on that one. But just in terms of overall Tau dollar value, $100 over the last 10 days per Tau you own is going to make anyone's day, really. So yeah, good move from that there. Looking at Solana. Oops, what have we done there? So Solana's still sort of just, not even slowly, but just, you know, building up. That's kind of what we would prefer Tau to be doing, to be honest, is instead of having these huge moves up, which could bring the fear of any sort of sharp moves back down, is just sort of like, you know, move up, come back down, consolidate, move up, come back down, consolidate. And we've kind of been doing that since April. You know, April it was down at $100, now sitting at 222, being as high as 250 in the last 4 weeks. And yeah, okay, we hit the 250, we kind of rolled off, bit of a sell-off there. 50 EMA didn't quite catch us, but we saw some sort of bounce, and we're just starting to work our way through. Now, Solana does actually need to do something here, because we can see over the last week or so, although we have climbed out of the lows of 190 from end of September, we've kind of, you know, really struggled to get above that 240 level. We're kind of rolling over again, and we're now getting squeezed between the 10 and the 20 EMA and that 50. So I'd like to see it make a strong positive move from this. And to be fair, it's got to clear 250 if we want to keep this momentum going. I'm trying to see if there's a sort of a similar kind of occurrence, probably when it got out of the April low, which you can't see. Similar kind of thing where strong climb out, and then we had a couple of weeks of it battling in and around the height in May, but then it fell over, and you can see it rolled over pretty hard. And what we don't want to see Solana doing is sort of rolling through. I mean, even 200, I mean, obviously the natural thing is you want us to keep it above 190. I'd obviously want to keep it above that. Maybe sort of taking in this 205. We've got a few sort of line, a few sort of support and resistance in around this level here, and sort of where that 50 EMA dipped down at the end of September. Maybe that's sort of where we try and make our ground. But you know, the fact that we have come down, nearly tested that 50 EMA, just want to see that next kick off from it. Be even better if one of those candles changes its color, blue or green, and yeah, we can go from there. Going down to the 4 hour, because again, Carrie, I know you talked about you thought there was it was on the daily. You thought there was a potential M formation, and so I was all trying to picture where we can take this from again. And I suppose I'm trying to squeeze it all in on the screen without my camera. If you took the April as the W, we're climbing out. So that's rise 1, quite clearly, pull back. And then again, it's the next question of, well, where's rise 2? You could argue that's rise 2 with a short pullback. This is rise 3, and we're in that M formation. And because we haven't been able to clear on that second right-hand shoulder, I actually can't rule that out. You know, this could be a classic sort of M there. And if we'd have to lose 190 to really confirm it. So unfortunately, Sol's going to have to lose its 200 EMA for us to be able to confirm that. But I think there's an argument definitely to be said for that. I don't like to put fundamentals above TA that often, but I suppose given what Solana has managed to achieve this cycle, given its relevance, given its numbering in the top 5, its impact it has on meme coins, everything else there, I'd be amazed that Solana rolls over, already has topped, and then starts to fall away whilst the rest of the market is looking like it's about to move up. I would be surprised that happens. I can't necessarily rule that one out, and that's unfortunately trading for you. It's never 100% certainty, but it would seem against the narrative if I was being perfectly honest. If it was a top 200 coin and it just happened to fall away whilst the rest of the market climbed, fine. But we're talking about, what is it, number by market cap? That's number 6. Okay, it's just outside the top 5. Number 5 if you don't include stable coins. I'd be surprised if that's it. So then you sort of say, well, what can it be? If we still use that as a double, that's 1. Is this just 2? And if you're not counting that as a top, you can't really count that as a top, nor can you count that as a bottom or that as a bottom. We could still just be climbing through 2 on the daily time frame, which then would give us a bit more time to go. That's a long rise 2. I accept that one, so I'm not necessarily buying that myself. So it's a case, well, can we find another bottom? It does look like there's some sort of M there. Is there a bottom here then that on the lower time frame sort of presents itself, and we have 1, 2, and we're just waiting to build 3? Yeah, I think so. But again, we just got to wait for times. Unfortunately, it's not that clear. That's the reality of it. I can try and make it clearer, but it doesn't look much clearer to me. So I'm sort of more looking at, I suppose, the wider picture and just the strength that Solana carries, in my opinion, in this cycle, to suggest that I don't feel that we've got an M here and we're looking for some 3 drops down on the day. Because remember, daily time frame drops are going to take an age to see all 3 of those play out. And I just don't think that's with the narrative of where the rest of the market is, in my opinion. I'll quickly do the 4 hour on this, and then let's just get rid of all of that. And then we'll move on because we're already close to 12:30 and I really want it to be done by then. 4 hour, so we've had that strong move back down. We've broken through it. I mean, I bet you on the 15-minute there's some right rise counts here, but then again, some sort of triple topping pattern here, and it rolling over, vector candle through, which was recovered, come back through. I mean, I'm confusing myself. I should have really looked at this, because I get the argument there, some sort of topping pattern, but then there's a similar argument here to be, well, is that just not a bottoming pattern? And we're just in some sort of random pattern forming position. The reality is I don't know. I'll take the patterns away and just be looking at EMAs and just say, well, we've managed to find support on the 200 EMA, we'll probably found just above on the daily. Okay. And we're just waiting for that battle through. We are being hemmed in with the 50 EMA at the moment. So, a couple more rejections from that. And I think we are going to be looking to try and reclaim this vector candle down here. And it's looking pretty tempting. When you look at that, it's right where the price action was. Not really being touched at yet. And it only takes us down to $210, sorry. So that's not the worst for it to sort of snap into there and find something from there. I could actually see that playing out. So I think, now that I looked at that, maybe that's something to ultimately consider from that. I'm a bit confused myself with those tops and that bottom there, and not being able to really find where we've got a bottom underneath my head. Anyway, let's just quickly look at dominance, and then I've really got to go, I'm afraid. On the daily, we already talked about the fact that there's some sort of compression that may well be playing out. And as I said, if that's the case, we're really in the apex of that. And we would expect it to do that. That's what we would expect a compression, whatever it is, to fall out. The fact that, we saw a strong move down, a bounce off the 800 EMA, and then it having this battleground in and around the 50 EMA in the cloud, it kind of buys into, okay, that sort of makes sense. But I just can't help but think Bitcoin normally performs stronger in October than everything else. And so we would actually be looking at something more like this, maybe to take us to that 60 EMA, taking out these vector candles and running into the 200 EMA line. It would break the compression TA, I get that, but that's what I'd be looking at. Now, in terms of just clearing all this, because it's noisy as anything, what that would mean, if we did get there, there's definite resistance levels or previous support. Here, I'll mark them. There, that's 3. I mean, there's loads here, but you get the point. And that move back up to 60, I know it's only 1% away, but it will, it will hurt a little bit for altcoins as a whole, whilst not making too much of a difference for how people are feeling with Bitcoin, but ultimately get us back to a level, buying us a bit more time in the cycle before we see that final rollover. I've been saying for weeks, I think Bitcoin dominance is still going to go back up. I've been saying it since we saw the lows of 57. Maybe I'm just being a bit too perma. It's going to keep rising. Maybe I just got to accept that it's risen enough already for it to roll over. But I never pulled the trigger on selling that Bitcoin into, Solana or Ethereum, and I haven't done it yet. I feel what will ultimately happen is I'll fall foul, and it will just already have made that move, and then I'll decide to sell it a long time. But that's for me to worry about, and we'll have a look there. Let's just quickly flick through all the others now the markets are open. Dollar's nearly back at 100, okay? I mean, that's sort of happened, hasn't it? People thinking it was about to roll over. We're actually about to hit 100 on this one. So interesting to see where that ultimately takes us. We're on the daily. NASDAQ actually hasn't made an all-time high today, but it's not far off its all-time high. Same with S&P. The Russell's doing very strong as well. Gold was above 4,000. It's dropped below, but it's not far away from it. Silver's hit the 50. Coinbase is flying. Circle's recovering. MicroStrategy's not. Interestingly enough, Nvidia's going strong. CowX is starting to build back up, and Tesla's kind of just ranging. They're all the ones that sort of been following there. So generally the market feels pretty good. And I made that comment on Tuesday about, I don't know where all this money is coming from to spur the markets up. And I'm going to try and go into that a bit more depth on Tuesday rather than on a charting call. But just bear in mind that the last 6 months of the S&P, since the tariff lows, this move up, I am led to believe, equates to $16 trillion. I mean, that's a lot of money. And I think the point I'm trying to make is, money printing is obviously going on. Whether or not it's really showing up on global M2 and everything else, we'll leave that for smarter people than me. But there seems to be an infinite money glitch there. We are printing a lot of money. I think a lot of valuations seem to be very much overvalued. And it does kind of feel to me, at least, that we're in a bubble territory of some sort. Other people are talking about market corrections. I mentioned this in the trading chat. I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow, but I really do feel like, unlike a lot of other people where they keep on going about, oh, this time it's different, it's up only. I'm kind of the opposite of, it feels like there's a lot of warning signs here that something's going to happen. Still time for us to play the game. But things like that do alarm me to think, well, at some stage, that's got to be reevaluated. Just my thoughts there. We'll go into it in a bit more detail on Thursday. That's it for me. I'm sorry it's only a few. Tau is dropping a little bit, but it's still at 12%. Don't worry about it too much. I've got to shoot off and do other things this afternoon, but I just wanted to at least sing Tau's praise a little bit because it has done so well today. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. I'll see you all on Tuesday. I will, of course, be around on Discord if anyone's got any questions. And other than that, speak to you all soon. Cheers now.